If you're looking to learn the latest skills in no code and AI, you have to check out nocodealliance.org. No matter if you're just starting out or if you're a seasoned pro and looking to specialize even further, we have courses at all levels and in all different tools. And we're adding new instructors on a monthly basis. So go to nocodealliance.org, create your free portfolio, check out some of our courses, even apply to jobs while you're there. And then for employers looking to tap into the greatest AI and no code talent, you could post a job there for free at nocodealliance.org. Immediately access over 2,000 of the world's best talents. And if that's not enough, we have a feature where you could boost your job to immediately access 5,000 more no code and AI devs throughout curated networks that we've put together with some of the best developers there. So go to nocodealliance.org to get started, and I hope to see you there. You're listening to This Week in No Code plus AI, with weekly episodes sharing the latest advancements of AI, plus exclusive interviews, founders using these tools. So without any further ado, let's get started. Welcome to This Week in No Code plus AI. I'm your host, JJ Englert, here with my co-host, David Pal. Another fantastic show for you this week in No Code plus AI. We have a slate of news and then bringing on another CEO to talk about their journey building their startup. But before we get into that, I have a little bit of news that I want to share myself. No Code Alliance just launched our own job board. And really excited about this. For years, I've been helping employers kind of behind the scenes match people to the best no code and AI talent. And now it's just a more automated way. You can immediately access over 2,000 devs that I've kind of handpicked and curated and sent that way along the last 4 years. And so you can go to nocodealliance.org to post a job for free and to apply to jobs as creators. But otherwise, David, let's get into the news.
Hola, mis amigos. Yo soy en la Ciudad de Mexico. Hi, everyone. I'm in
Are
Mexico
you in
City right
Mexico?
now. Where in
I
the
didn't
world
know
is David? I
that.
am in Mexico City right now. Calling from, where am I? In Roma Norte. In,
I loved your tweet the other day about you
yeah,
going on a tour.
we went on
What was
an
it?
ATV tour around the volcano. It was a really awesome tour. I was a little nervous. I'm not a big ATVer. I'm always worried about it, like flipping over on me. But we went up and down this hill. It was so much
Yeah.
fun. Went around in a big circle, and I think my tweet was basically, "We went on this awesome tour. I had so much fun, but we ended up in the same place where we started." It was just a good reminder that sometimes it's just about the journey and not about the destination, and you got to enjoy yourself along the way and not we didn't technically go anywhere, right? But we had a lot of
Yeah, I mean that got me and deep in several levels. It's just you got to
fun.
enjoy what you're doing. We're always starting journeys. There's many micro decisions we make each day that leads us on the journey, and if we're not enjoying it, it is what it is. But with the first
Yeah.
news of the day, David,
Let's
what's
talk
happening
about
here?
Altera's Project Sid. They are pioneering the AI civilization, virtual civilizations. They are simulating people acting together in society, with economies, with hierarchies, with tasks. Basically, this idea of trying to see what would happen now that we have all these like language models and AI. What would people do if they were left on their own, or at least what the AI thinks?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's picking up social norms, regulation, just seeing what it's like. I know a lot of people think that we're in a simulations ourselves, but this is definitely interesting to start seeing this kind of stuff at scale using LLMs, which I thought was really interesting. Another point of the day is NVIDIA getting subpoenaed in an escalating DOJ antitrust investigation. And also, NVIDIA recently lost a crap ton in the stock market.
Time to buy,
So
right?
the hottest company like last month is having a hard time right now. I think it's just there's a lot of things changing, a lot of things moving fast. As one of the leaders, they gained a lot of attention, and now it's the DOJ just trying to figure out how are we going to regulate this industry? How are we going to move forward? Granted, Nvidia does have a lot of it. They're a leading player, so it's
Yeah, I
interesting to
mean,
follow
some of
along.
it stems from like there's a lot of it is stemming from their sales practices. I think there's a lot going on.
Especially with a limited supply where companies are just buying out that entire limited supply to prevent other people from
Yeah,
able to get it, you know?
um, Yeah, and they're forcing people to buy bundles, right? And so,
Hmm.
like, if you want to buy a chip, you also have to buy a bunch of hardware connecting pieces or server pieces and things like that. And so, I think that's what they're like coming down on, right? Like, I want to buy a thing that you're selling. I shouldn't have to buy 17 other things as well. That's part of it. They're
Yeah.
also like, um, I mean, the stock market piece, why they lost so much money, some of it was because a lots of people have been asking, besides this antitrust investigation, like at some point the money's going to stop. If Wall Street, Google, OpenAI, Microsoft, Facebook, if they're not making money on these investments, eventually they're going to stop buying more chips, right? Like they don't need more.
Hmm.
They can keep running the chips they have. They don't need more chips. Right. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, well, I don't know.
Right.
Lots happening.
Yeah, speaking of chips, X recently launched a massive, what's the proper term for it? Like a server factory, something like
Data
that, where they
center?
spun up like just about 100,000 machines data center, and they plan to double that in the coming months, which is a significant step forward for them to be able to do so much more with AI. So that's really growing. We also have Playground AI, which I thought was really cool this week. I think it's another Y Combinator
I
company,
think
and it's
so. But
essentially
they have gone through a
wasn't it?
number
Yeah, I
of
think
pivots at this point. Um, like
mm,
they originally started basically by building streaming computers in the cloud. So the idea was they would like
okay.
launch these really powerful computers to run GPU processes. And then instead of needing to do it on your local machine, right, and like have all of this hardware on your hard drive and not hard drive on your computer, you would then stream the output of this computer as if your screen was just the screen of this other computer. And that would basically give you all this
Yeah,
extra computation because streaming is now like
yeah,
lossless and very low latency. You can just get all this. And so they were in this like GPU world. This was, I think, before a lot of the AI craze. And then they were like moving
interesting.
into LLM space, but then that got really crowded. And so they moved into this AI image generation space. And so they're actually taking a really unique perspective on um, how they're going to approach like generate instead of just using like Dolly model where you just like type something in, they've actually
Hmm.
like curated designs from real humans and real artists to then use that as
Yep,
base
yep,
content for what you're trying to do. And so you actually get a really good um, model of like what you're aiming for and how you edit things. And they've done a really great job of just building like an online graphic designer where the text works, right? Not something that you've normally been able to do. And you can actually maintain a lot of
yeah,
like what you're aiming for first with a visual perspective instead of I want a sticker that looks like a this. It's like, oh, here's a starting point. How do I modify this? And it's really awesome.
yeah. For those that haven't tried it yet, it's like a playground of popular design assets, and then you could take that asset and then change parts of that asset using AI. And I tried it with like logos and some other things. I thought it was good. I thought it was probably one of the better ones that I've tried, but still not there yet. Some of the text still came off just like you could tell that it was like kind of like a made up word here and there. But otherwise, I think this is going to get improved, and the framework is really strong. And as the AI algorithms improve, this is just going to be fantastic. And so it's like a 99 designs or like a Fiverr designs by AI, and it's really I think has
Yeah.
a lot of potential to be great. So that was exciting to see. Some other stuff outside of this news is David and I are going to be at BubbleCon in October, so that's going to be really exciting. We can meet you guys in person. Um, Maybe we'll do a live episode
Yeah, I
there.
reached out
Who knows?
to
That could be
someone on
really
the bubble
fun.
team to see if we could record an episode live. I haven't heard back. I don't know if they're doing
It'd be really cool if we could, and then we could have like a live now like banner of just like on
it. Yeah,
radio kind of
exactly.
thing. um, Yeah, that could be really cool. So we'll be there. Also, I will be at No Code Summit in October as well. So we're preparing for a busy season
Hmm.
of events on that side. What else? Oh, I acquired my first
Oh,
thing this
oh
week.
yeah,
So
you
I
ripped
acquired a
the lead
newsletter.
last time.
Uh, I did. And so the newsletter is called The Workflows. It was the number one jobs newsletter for no code and bubble jobs. And it still is. And so it was originally built by Lee, one of the great bubble builders in the no code space. And as I was launching the No Code Alliance job board, he messaged me. He was like, "Hey, look, you're launching the job board. Would you be interested in this newsletter?" And I looked and I was like, they've done a great job. It provides weekly jobs. There's like 15 to 20 new jobs each week that this free
Mhm.
newsletter sends you. And so I was like, yep, let's buy it. It's my first
Congrats,
acquisition. Put on my
congrats.
big boy pants.
Yeah.
Really happy about that. Sometimes you just need to invest in your business to grow your business. And so now that had about 1,500 subscribers to it, matched with my 4 or 5,000 email list. Now the reach for helping employers find no code talent is like 5,000 each, each post kind of thing, plus my Slack group of 600 plus my networks, my Slack and LinkedIn and all that kind of
You're
stuff.
doubling down.
There's podcast. I think, yeah, doubling down, helping no coders, great talent, find new jobs and helping employers
Hmm.
connect with that talent. I think that's just something that's naturally I've been doing in the background. And so I'm excited to do this more in a larger scale. Also, David, you had another tweet this week. It was
Yeah.
about making money. What was it?
The tweet was pretty simple. You're probably trying too hard to make a buck. And I think, I've been reflecting on this a lot, and like, I think a lot of the times we try to get clever with our ideas. Like, oh, I have this idea for an app. And if this, and this condition is true, then people might pay me $5 a month for this next few. And it's usually much simpler than that. And I,
Mm,
like when we talk about the agency, right? Like we're offering a pretty simple service. We're like, hey, great, we're going to build you an app. Like we know how to build.
yeah.
You need an app built. You don't know how to build. We've filled the problem. And in Hampton, I'm part of the
Hmm.
entrepreneur CEO group, Hampton, and they're just full of founders who have big businesses, multi-million dollar businesses, and they're all doing things that you're like, oh, that's not that like the service you're providing doesn't seem that complicated. It's not some crazy AI
Yeah.
implementation of, a new model running on a server underwater in a seaweed farm. It's pretty like, hey, someone needed a thing, I did it, and now I do it 100 times a day, right? Like it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be clever to make a dollar. Like go find someone who has someone willing to pay you and do that.
Yeah, when I was building No Code Alliance in the last 2 to 3 weeks, 4 weeks, maybe even, like I had so much
Yeah.
fun building, right? But like that's my builder hat. Now, when you get to like that seller hat, like it's a completely different way to think of things. And to your point, we often complicate that, and there's a lot of things that we think about that it doesn't need to be that difficult. Sometimes it's just simple. There's this problem, let's build this
Yeah.
solution and sell it. I think a really simple one that is finding a lot of success is Peter Level's, photo AI, where it's like people need headshots. We're gonna upload your headshot and we'll use AI to make you new headshots for like $10 or whatever it is. And it's working really well. He's making over $100,000 a month with it, and it's really not that hard to build. But it's just like people need this. Here's a fresh take on how to get it.
Yeah,
Here
yeah.
we
I
go.
mean that is true. I think his example is even a little bit more complicated than I'm thinking because, and the reason why
Hmm.
I think that is like I was not in the market to buy a headshot before he had this service, right?
Sure.
And so I think there's even a more like fundamental market opportunity of like, yeah,
Vending
someone's
machines.
already buying a service and
Yeah.
they're doing a thing or they're doing something already that they don't like doing, like maybe start there, right? Instead of, oh, I
Yeah.
could build these really awesome photo models. Oh, I can sell them as avatars. Like, Yeah, but I wasn't buying that. Like, there's still a bit of education why. Um, I just
Yeah.
think that like we live in a tech bubble of indie hackers where it's, we're trying to get some edge on something, but like you can also find a market where there's already people doing it and just do it a little bit better. Like you don't even have to like do a new thing.
Yeah, one of the ways that I love to research it is I'll go on to like
Mm,
acquire.com and see what businesses are selling for, see some of those metrics, look up some of the reviews that those businesses have gotten and see if they're good
yeah.
or bad kind of thing, and see if there's any opportunity of like, hey, this business is valued for this. These are the metrics I know. Per the market, they don't really love this. They would prefer something to be like this. Maybe that's a good way to start. I mean, that could still be more complicated depending on what kind of business you're
Yeah.
looking into, but I feel your point. Point well received and heard is don't
Yeah.
complicate things, especially if you don't like doing
Yeah.
that thing in the first
Yeah.
place, which is selling. So find something really simple that's just natural, and just make it so easy that
Hmm.
it just flies
That's
off
right.
the shelf.
I think that's a good tip. Tip of the week.
Should we
Let's
get
do
on with
it.
our? All right. Well, David, I won't be joining you for this one because it's a super special one between
Yeah.
you and our CEO, but I will
That sounds
catch you
great.
guys next
We
week.
will see you. I'll still be in Mexico, but we'll see you. How do you say next? El próximo semana en este semana de no code. I don't speak Spanish very well, obviously.
For all of you out there listening, if you are in the market for any kind of software development needs, check out Studio No Code. It's our agency that's built on Bubble experts with nearly a decade of experience building all kinds of Bubble apps, marketplace, social network, payroll company, catering business, data room, ad tech, legal tech. We got a little bit of everything. We've seen it all, and that helps us translate all of our knowledge into your app to build the best product for your customers. We built it professionally, we built it to be secure, and we built it to scale. And we're going to do all these things on time and on budget. So if you are looking for help getting off the ground, getting something to market, or anything in between, give us a call or an email or a carrier pigeon or whatever you want. Studio-nocode.com. We'll probably be there.
Well, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce my friend Campbell, from the CEO and founder of Mantra. Welcome to the show. Welcome to This Week in No Code and AI.
Thank you, David.
You
Pleasure
are
to be here.
the poster boy of no code and AI, then to just code and AI, but no code and AI. So introduce us to Mantra.
Well, I feel like when you just said that, I feel like the true poster boy of no-code AI, stood up in his or her chair. Happy to give the intro. Thanks for having me. So I'm the co-founder of a company called Mantra, and I'm a big, longtime fan of Bubble as well. And at Mantra, we use AI, so I'd kind of check those boxes there. What we do at Mantra is we have built a video creation tool that's as familiar as Google Slides or PowerPoint that makes it really easy to create engaging talking head videos. So screen recordings, presentations, slide by slide, all at once. We transcribe your video, you edit it via the transcript. We can add zooms and edit out mistakes and add music that's automatically leveled to the tone of your volume. So, sales demos, product demos, that type of thing. The tool kind of really excels at those use cases. And my background has been in, video creation. I'm typically non-technical, or not typically, I am non-technical, despite
most
my best
days,
efforts.
except for Sunday,
Right.
Labor
Yeah,
Day,
exactly.
non-technical. But on
Depending on
Sundays,
how
watch
good I
me
am
use
at
cursor.
prompting. Right. Exactly.
Exactly.
But yeah, definitely non-technical, and but have been obsessed with building products my whole life, and also making videos. And so I did a lot of freelance video editing for various startups. Kind of witnessed the rise of tools like Loom become prominent within organizations. But I was also observing the rise of tools like TikTok and CapCut and captions on the consumer side. It made it really, really easy for people to make these great videos on their phones, and then saw it was happening at work and was like, this gap is very strange. We should be able to make better stuff at work, especially when it matters, when you want to pitch your boss or, present your idea to an investor. these are high stakes, environments, high stakes kind of videos that you're going to be making. And the best tool we have is one where you could effectively trim the in point and out point.
Yeah.
And so, i.e. Loom and even Slack video, right? Not a great tool for quick asynchronous, video, which is what these pieces of software were meant for, but not really great for something that's meant to last. And so, we want to give, everyone a voice with video, allow people to make engaging video without needing to edit. And that's what we do.
And not needing to know how to edit, what to edit, why to edit. It's
Yep.
kind of, there's a lot that I was able to play around with it. There's a lot that just happens for you, which is, I think, part of the beauty of it. It's not that the tool is plenty powerful, but it's what it does kind of automatically. Right?
Yeah, no, I think that's we've worked hard at that, so it's a high praise. But
yeah.
Coming from you especially, I think. And look, I think this is the worst it will ever be, which is really exciting. Like we have not shipped 99% of what I think we can do, and that's not a feature perspective. That's the stuff that will just happen behind the scenes that the users won't even realize. But I think you really highlighted a kind of a great point, which is, and this is This Week in No Code, and we could talk about the no code part, earlier on, because there's a big part of kind of the company founding story. But the AI part is just remarkable in the sense that these models are so capable, especially with dealing with language and transcripts. Google's Gemini model is fantastic at actually understanding video cues as well, like visual kind of analysis. So you combine those three, and it's a really exciting time to be in the video space, because we're not very far away from me just being able to talk to my camera and the video effectively editing itself, and not just removing filler words, understanding deeply the building blocks of what makes a good video. And the thing is, it's not like the AI is going to do that by itself. You need someone who understands good video to kind of be in the driver's seat there. But that's my background. There's like nothing I care more about making engaging video. So, I think we're really going to be, over the next year, I think it's going to be really exciting to see what people do with the tool, because, you've been awesome with your feedback thus far, but this is really the worst it's going to be. And that's incredibly exciting.
We've heard that sentiment, and I'm sure felt that when we use the open tools that we can, Open AI, Claude, Gemini. There was an interesting interview with Sam Altman on 20VC talking about how, like, either you bet that OpenAI is not going to win, or we're going to do so well and you're just going to ride the wave with us and you're going to benefit. I heard that and I thought of you immediately. Like, all of these things that are, not for free, but billions of dollars of
definitely not for free.
Well, you're paying
the opposite of free.
They are.
They're very expensive for Satya Nadella and a few other people, but for the rest of us, they are effectively for free. Relative to the complexity, we're not, like, we made this really. There was this kind of era when GPT kind of first came out, or 3.5. Not came out, but became relevant. And there's this strategy that a few startups were taking, where they raise enough, like $10 million or whatever, $15 million, and they were building a SaaS app, and they decided, we're going to train our own models on our own data set, whatever. And I remember like learning about this and was like, no, like, this is not what we're going to do. We're never going to try it. We're like, there's not a world where this is going to make sense. This was like before RAG was really understood, which is effectively which is a much better way of doing this. You can tweak existing models, but training your own, it's just like, to me, just never, it just seemed like a distraction. The same way you don't want to build your own video transcription API. There are plenty of them that already exist that do the job. So I think like the YC approach of like, Y Combinator's, like, I think Gary Tan talked about, like, better models, better startups. That's real. And assuming you're not building something that's directly in the middle of the roadmap of OpenAI or Anthropic, then I think you're going to be fine. And I think the amount of stuff that you can build, I've been, tinkering with apps since like 2015, 2016. I've been bubbling since like 2017. And I've been making videos a lot longer than that. And I have never been filled with more ideas, and I have never seen more cool stuff get built in as short of a period of time as, over the last kind of 18 months.
How do you take, or do you like build little side things on, like, testing stuff out, see where the models are, or? Are you? I haven't read the
I'm a
essay,
big
but are
fan of
you going to
Bubble
talk
for
about
tinkling. Listen, I'm not launching any, like, I'm full. Every idea I think about is in the context of what we're building at Mantra. Like,
Yeah.
this is what I'm really excited to be working on. And so, Mantra is not a no code product. The first prototypes we built were, and so that's in the DNA of the company. So I definitely engage with, I love building prototypes for various no code products, or no code, kind of like a no code prototype of something that will be a Mantra product, or a
Yeah.
feature of a Mantra product. It's
Would
really
you-
expensive to
Yeah.
ask a developer to be like, hey, can you work on that if I have no idea? And look, there are
Yeah.
some things that, like, a Figma prototype won't do, and you just have to write it in actual code, because it integrates so deeply with what we've already built, and we just have to test it out. And oftentimes we'll build something, we'll just be like, this doesn't really feel good, etc. So if the
Yeah.
percentage of the stuff we end up prototyping, if the majority of it we don't actually implement, then the
It's
stuff that
very
we do
useful.
actually end up prototype. Yeah, exactly. Like, if you could do it on Bubble, you should. So I'm definitely a kind of weekends warrior where I'll mess around with Bubble and see, and I'll show them to the team. And they'll be like, all right, whatever. But it saved them the time.
Yeah. Exactly.
And
And you
so
know
you
what to
could do a
work on
lot.
next. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
It
So
helps.
I'm very into it. I'm definitely nowhere near as proficient as I was back in the day. Like, as a teenager, I when in the old, for example, the new response, this is really embarrassing, but the new responsive editor still confuses the hell out of me. I have not got the hang of it. So,
Either you
and I was
learn
pretty,
Either you
yeah,
learn on the new responsive engine, that's your first experience, or you
right,
spend a couple weeks figuring out why what
right.
you thought was right is wrong.
Right. So I haven't been able to do the second. So I'll be like, all right, guys, here's my prototype, and they're like, why is it like a 500 pixel wide fixed screen? It's like,
Yeah.
don't worry about it.
Why is everything on the left? That's
Yeah,
weird.
exactly. This isn't what we would call the ideal UX.
Yeah. This is just to show the button does a thing. So do you, okay,
Right.
so I was super curious about prototyping in a company. Do you have, like, is this a structured thing? Like, do you have a prototyping system almost? Or like, oh, hey, here's our bubble app that we use to prototype, and I can just pull a bunch of things from.
Yeah, no, it's not that structured. I do this in a way that doesn't involve the team. That's the whole point, right? We don't
Right.
want to pull teammates from their men. Like, we have teammates who are working on a Rust backend for live conversions of, WebM chunks to HLS MP3 and MP4 chunks in GStreamer. They should not be thinking about how to make my Bubble prototype responsive. That would be that'd be a massive waste of company resources.
Yeah.
So
That's not why
the
you hired
options
them.
are,
Yeah.
that's not why I hired them. Same with our most talented front end developers, I should say. We've got a great team. Everyone kind of has their own strengths there. But for me, and this happened recently. We did a quick prototype of something. It took about half a day, like some adjustment to auto zooms. We couldn't have. It's something that you just couldn't do in Figma. We were like, where do we start them? Maybe do we start them slightly before you actually highlight the zoom? Because I thought that then you could just highlight a word, that zoom is highlighted, whatever. Don't need to get into the nitty gritty. So we spent half a day doing it. We tried it out, and the second I tried it out, I was like, not it. It's clear as day that this is not good. And if you do that over and over and over and over again, it can get demoralizing. So that was something where we had to do it within the product. We had to engage with an engineer. But things like, what's a cool concept of the share page? I've done a lot of this. What's an interesting way to, maybe there's some alternate kind of transcription prompting we could do. Like, there's just a bunch of stuff that we've played around with where I will do it. Sometimes I'll even engage with, some fellow Bubble contractors to do it, etc. For various,
Just
tests.
to see it work,
And just to see it work. Stuff that's, out of my capabilities, I'll definitely engage with folks there. And I'm a big believer in this technology, especially in the context of being more capital efficient with the full-time engineers that we have on the team, right? And it's not a lack of focus. It's just like when you're building a video creation tool, there's so many different threads you could pull, so many different use cases, so many different people you could talk to. It's a very, very difficult thing to do. I'm really, even though I've been making videos my whole life, I think you've seen this probably from the side. Like, it's taken a lot longer than I thought it would. It's just a very hard problem. And so
Yeah.
if we can not engage with full-time
If you're
engineers,
distracted and moving around, it's
right,
longer.
right,
It's like not just the lost time, it's
right.
then the shift back in, the reprioritization, the
Hmm.
enthusiasm, like all these things. It's like way worse than
Hmm.
just that time.
Totally.
That's yeah. Now that, like, thinking about that problem of you could build so much in the product, so you build with Bubble before you decide, is a
Hmm.
problem for Bubble built companies because they can build it in their products, right?
Right,
Like the prototype you
right,
think that
right,
that then
right,
needs to go through development is just like, oh, it's
right,
not part of the product. And so
right.
like you
And so
get super
you could
creep
get
and
bloated.
bloat.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then you
totally.
still have to support the feature. Like it's
Yeah,
not like, oh, I built it, it's done. Right. Then
yeah.
they want, then like if you give a mouse a cookie, right? Like I built the share thing. Well, now I want payments on the share page. Okay, well, let me, move away over to this thing. Right. And so like in the bubble world, you get tempted to be like, oh, it's just a day. And it's like
Hmm.
3 days to get it production ready or 5 days. And then something else.
Yeah,
And so,
yeah.
yeah, people want I see the value in the code world. It's a warning sign for bubble builders.
Totally. And I also think I'm a really big fan of this product called Granola. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's have you heard of it? Okay.
No.
It's an AI note taker, and there are a million. It's a meeting note taker, and there are a million of these things.
Yeah.
And so it's not it's not what you would call like it's a red ocean in this sense. There's a lot of competitors, and I think they did a seed round from Lightspeed, and I remember hearing about this. I was like, okay, like it was like an
Another
ambiguous.
one.
We're building the future of work. Yeah, another one, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. You know, and then I heard about the product and was kind of shrugged it off. And then heard about it enough. Listened to a really great interview the founder did with Mike Mignano, who's a partner at Lightspeed, who I know is an awesome guy in New York. And he did their seed round, and he started to anchor the podcast platform, which is like I was a big fan of.
Right.
I'm a big fan of. And so he did the seed round, and he was talking about the product. And so I finally played around with it, and it just takes your notes and does it in the background. And it's such a simple product. And what makes Granola so powerful is what it doesn't do, right? It's not trying to become the mother app. It's not trying to take over your entire workflow.
Mhm.
It listens to your meetings, takes really good notes in the background. It doesn't join any Zoom calls. I could technically have it on now. I don't, but I could. So it's a little stealthy. That's useful.
Interesting.
But it merges the notes I take in the meeting with the notes of the transcript and gives me like the super summary. And it's so elegant, so beautiful, so like you, if it, I think it's an Electron app, web app, whatever. Like, I'm sure you could build a version of this in Bubble if you were able to access the kind of computer audio permissions.
Yeah.
And yet
I
you
mean,
could do
audio
so much
pad does
more.
that, right?
Right. You could do so much more on top
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah.
But they chose not to. They shipped an action items feature that the founder talked about, and he pulled it away. He unshipped it before they launched because he was like, this is not crisp.
Yeah.
And
It
so
needs to be
I
better.
think
Yeah.
there's that midwit meme of like, keep it simple. And then the kind of middle thing, which is like, we need all this, whatever. And by the way, my biggest fear as a founder is that mantra is too far in the middle. And then there's the other end, which is keep it simple. And I think simplicity is often scoffed among VCs as, this is, well, it could be easily clonable. It's like, yes, but every software could be clonable, no matter how complicated.
Yeah.
Really, for the most part, unless you sign one government contract that will only ever be the government like you're generally not going to be building something that's truly defensible. So why do I use Granola? Because brand, it's well designed, etc. Someone could launch a clone tomorrow and I wouldn't switch. Doesn't bother me. So and they're going to build. They eventually will build more features. I think you can build more features, but they're very thoughtful about it. I think that's the key. So all of this to be said, to say, I think one of the challenges with Bubble is that it's actually so easy, it's so quick to build shit that, like you mentioned, you can get out of hand.
Yeah.
Like if I want to ship a feature like moving, like right now we don't let the user split slides manually. AI does that for you. You know this. If I want to click in between a word, you should be able to hit enter, and like that's an obvious change the layout. That's something that like we are working on now. That sounds so simple. It's incredibly complicated. And yet if this was, if there was some, and yet like if this was built on Bubble, it couldn't be. But assuming, we were doing some other comparable tool and it was like, break this paragraph into multiples, like fuck, that could be done in 30 seconds. So I do think that it has its advantages, but it also has its drawbacks.
Yeah, I mean, there's something that's really important about the intentionality of what to build, right? Like you said, anyone can clone an app which says, I know when to start building, but they don't know when to stop building. And they don't know
Totally.
how to listen to feedback the same way. They don't know how to go, okay, well, launching a product, you're going to get lots of feedback from lots of different people, and they're going to say one thing and mean something completely different. Like they don't always just
Yep.
go, oh, I need a button that hits this enter button and you hit slash.
And
Like,
usually if they ask that, it's not a good sign.
right.
Usually if you're like literally listening to direct feedback, like face value, it's usually just masked for some other, either you're not useful enough or whatever.
Yeah,
So we're in the
definitely.
middle of this right now. We've received a ton of feedback from a
Yeah.
wide range of camps. Some of it good, some of it bad, some of it I thought was bad that was good. And it's just like, it is a grind to kind of like filter through this stuff.
Mhm. It is. And like, there's some amount of like, it has to jive with you and your vision too. And so, like,
Mm-hmm.
you need to let it sit for a second and go through a planning cycle and not necessarily just start building tomorrow because, the customer is going to say the obvious thing because they're not imaginative in building software. Like, that's not their job. They're not software I mean, maybe they are in some
Mm-hmm.
cases, but
Mm-hmm.
they're not in the product every day.
Yep.
And this is why, like, getting feedback through a chat bot or through an email is way different than watching somebody use something because
Totally.
usually it's the unsaid thing that you notice on their screen. They tried to click a
Mm-hmm.
button twice. They went to
Yeah,
the left
totally.
pane, but then they had to go back to the right pane. You're like, oh, it is there. It needs to be more obvious. Like
Yeah.
those are the things that make people's products delightful. And I think that's
Yep.
you're really in tune with that. Like just not going, oh yeah, I can add a thing over here. It's like, no.
Mm-hmm.
Let's make it as
Mm-hmm.
few clicks as possible in the right
Mm-hmm.
spot, in the right way that does what you
Yep.
expect. And I think that
Totally.
is really, really commendable and not obvious.
Thank you, man. That took a long. I mean, I still think I look at the product now and it's like I only see what's wrong with it.
Mm.
But I talk to a lot of founders, and I talk to founders who are a lot further ahead than I am, and that I don't think really does. I don't think that changes.
It doesn't ever
In the
change.
sense that like I don't think you. I think you always just look at the flaws. It's like we built something cool. People use it. They find it cool. There's still a lot of work to do, but like I think that being able to get people to, if you talk about the founder vision in our case, it's how could we make it as easy as possible for people to express themselves with video in a way
Yeah.
where they feel really comfortable doing so. Right? We never want anyone on Mantra to be like, oh, this just doesn't feel right. We want
I don't know how to do
people
this.
to finish recording. We want them to click play, and then we want them to be blown away by just the very first thing they're seeing automatically. It
Yeah.
removed mistakes for them. It added relevant text next to them. Removed their background and replaced like all of the beautiful things that you would expect, a video editor to do. And I wrote a memo about this actually to our
Yeah.
team recently, which was, for a long time, we kind of positioned ourselves as a Loom alternative. And I think there's some truth to that in the context of like fast, or in the context of screen recordings that are less ephemeral. You do see people download Looms and post them on LinkedIn. And I think Mantra is superior to that. But more and more, it's becoming very clear that we're actually not competing with Loom. We're competing with like freelance video editors oftentimes, in the sense that, people are going to use our tool in lieu of using, hiring someone on Fiverr. And that's kind of crazy because I started this company as a freelance video editor, but
It's all come full
it's
circle.
also inevitable in the sense that if we don't, it's not like we're the only ones doing this. Like there are a
Yeah.
plethora of tools on the market, and there will continue to be, that will all kind of serve their purpose.
Yeah.
And I do also think it's like one of those things where it will free up freelance video editors to actually work on consequential shit, like videos that matter, right? Videos that are very difficult to pull off. If you're paying me to make a launch video and I'm going to edit it manually on Premiere Pro, I am probably using 5 to 10% of what Premiere Pro is capable of. Max. That is a waste of my skill set. I should be working on feature length documentary films. I should be working on longer form kind of YouTube. You're not editing a Mr. Beast video on Mantra anytime soon. Like there are really impressive pieces of media you could create with these tools. So what we're just trying to do is just take the bot, 60% of what you could do, 70% of what you could do with Premiere Pro, and make it 5% the learning curve effectively, and do a lot of that is just doing it for you automatically.
It's interesting that you say I I've been thinking a lot about like how to build good products. What's a good product? You mentioned like Mantra will replace freelance video editors, but I think also it enables people who wouldn't have hired a
Yeah,
freelance
totally.
editor to actually have that quality. Like if I'm
It
writing
is a
a
freelance
sales
video editor.
demo,
That's kind
I'm
of the
not
way to think
hiring a
about it.
freelance. Yeah, I'm not
Totally.
hiring a freelance dev. I'm going, okay, well, this is as good as I got. and
Yep.
that's
Yep.
and now it's okay, great. Wow, this is beautiful. Like this is something I'm excited to share and not I have to share. And it's a really
100%.
it's a really cool way to think about building products.
Yep. And just one other point on that front, we've talked to a ton of like head of marketings at various companies, folks who are in charge of allocating, video editing resources across the organization. And if you are a video editor in New York City, you make 150 grand a year and you work for a Series B startup, you are not going to be hired and not going to be deployed, I should say, to work on a onboarding video for a mid-level teammate who wants to feel welcomed, etc. Even though the HR manager will request it every single time.
And
you are not going to be deployed. Yeah, it would be great for the company. You're not going to be deployed for the product, head of product marketing or by the product marketing manager for a feature that she's been working on for 6 months, even though it's really consequential to her and she wants a really great launch video. You're not going to be deploying an editor to that because that's a drop in the bucket in the grand scheme of things. And yet that doesn't mean it shouldn't have one. So I think our whole pitch to customers, but also to investors, is really just this idea that when you lower the barrier to any creative pursuit, you just dramatically increase the supply. And so looking at the amount of videos that are created today is actually a really bad comp for Mantra, because that factors in the amount of videos created today pre-Mantra. But what does this look like post-Mantra?
Right, exactly.
And
that's a hard thing to
ones.
sell. Yeah, it's a hard thing to pitch. I think we live in this boat. I've been writing my pitch deck to raise some cash. And part of it is like, okay, there are major competitors that have a market share, that a market size they believe in. But we think there's like, that's just the tip of the iceberg of what might be useful, but no one can afford it. And so they don't do it. And so like, great, we can now all do it. The long tail is 5 times as large as the top. We can go get a much bigger opportunity. It's hard. You have to just believe that demand exists, and it's hard to find it because there's no data, because no one's doing it yet.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. But I think I do think the best companies are like obvious to some people and not obvious to others. And I'll give all of our investors credit there. It like was obvious to them. The people who got Mantra got it quick and moved fast and appreciated that. And there are VCs who I'll talk to who it's just like, I know within a minute into the meeting that there's not a chance they would write me a check, write me $1. And then there's others where it's just like, I don't need to convince them. I know within 30 seconds of the meeting that they're 100% sold, and assuming I don't completely embarrass myself, like this is going to work.
This is going to work.
And, I think one of my founder friends, Sam at Levels, he talks a lot about kind of VC, matchmaking, and it's effectively matchmaking. You're never going to convince someone that your idea is good. Very rarely. You just need to effectively find the people who think your idea is good and then work with them. They're going to go into the meeting making their decision within the first 30 seconds to a minute. And so, it's very hard to convince someone of something they believe and then change their mind. You're not trying to change anyone's mind here. You're just trying to matchmake effectively. And so his view is the more information you can set in advance to help that filtering mechanism, the better.
Yeah. There's a saying, that it's better to have a compelling pitch than a good argument, right? Or something along those lines, right? Like I want my offer to be good, that immediately this is great. You just want to know how it works and how much it costs, and not put up 17 barriers I need to jump through. And maybe if I answer correctly, you'll say yes. You just want them to get it. Right. And so that is definitely the same with VC. So you've raised money. Where in the no-code journey were you when you raised money?
Yeah, we had built. So before no code, I would argue the bedrock of any product is a Figma file. Well, maybe a pitch deck, but I would say a Figma file is like the truest sense. So, we had built on Figma and hopped on a bunch of calls and demoed people on our Figma file. That then translated into a no-code product that I just built behind the scenes. And it was a very different product than what we were building today. It was like narrated presentations, audio only. It was very much like I was not thinking that we were going to build a video creation tool. And even when I did think we'd build a video creation tool, I only assumed it would be, for presentations. And so Mantra has just been a series of just like kind of reaching a mini milestone, realizing that there's a much bigger opportunity, and then going after, like, climbing a ladder, and doing so in a way where, like, if you look at the product, like the prototypes I drew by hand on a piece of paper back in the day versus, and you look at to what we built now, the discrepancy isn't massive.
Yeah.
Like, we haven't added a ton more features, right? Like the product, like the videos you can make on the tool are a lot better. But it kind of goes to your point of just like our belief. It's like when you're building creative tools, you have 3 pillars: speed, quality, and control, but you can only pick 2. And we picked speed and quality, where the user gives up control. There's no timeline. There's a lot of things we missed. So to go to your question, after the Figma prototype phase, I had built a prototype on Bubble, and that was something that you could use, that we got a few people to use, that I actually made a video on, that I ended up using to raise money. And so I would do these investor meetings and be like, hey, this is my prototype. Wouldn't really mention it's on Bubble. I kind of made it clear we're going to build this from scratch off code. We've kind of hit a wall with what we built, and we were raising money because we needed a team.
Right. The point of the fundraise was
right. Yes. If that wasn't the case, then there's no reason to raise money. If it could just be built, like, I'm not a big fan of just raising money for the sake. People often ask, like, do you regret raising money? And it's like, well, it's like, that's more of like a do you regret starting the company question, because I would only regret raising money if, like, the entire company didn't work. There was no option. It wasn't like, don't raise, like, if we didn't raise money, like, we wouldn't do the company. It was just like one of those things where you just can't really build, with one kind of dev working part-time. And so
this was, this is like the edge of Bubble ability. Like, had it been 9 out of 10,
we were pushing it hard. Dude, we were pushing, when we talk about we were pushing Bubble hard, like, I do think you can build a video editor on Bubble. It's a grind. So we were like, recording a video, it would then make an API call to like a rendering engine API that would then like mask the video onto the background of a slide the user uploaded. Then it would return that to the user. Then they could rearrange the order. Then you would click share, and then it would concatenate those together. And that alone was not a terrible experience. Like, we did that. We could do that well. It was what became a lot more difficult with anything after that. Trimming became a tough thing to do. And, we were just like hit. And so the problem was that our whole pitch was always like, increase the quality. And so our investors like, all right, bet, increase the quality. And so to do that, you needed to build it off Bubble. And, like, by the way, I still think about one of the things that, like, today, a pillar of Mantra is how can you make the best quality video with the least amount of effort? I don't see a world where the tool succeeds without that being true. And so this was just a natural evolution. Like you mentioned, we would not even 9 times out of 10, I would say like literally like 5 times, like 95% of products, I think, can be built on Bubble, on web apps, I would say, apps. And we literally, we were like in that 5% that probably, that truly couldn't. So anything else you can.
Where do you see, we talked about this a little bit when we were chatting before, where do you see NoCode and Bubble in the VC community? Like, how does it fit? Should it, like, it's not.
I think about this actually often, because I was a aspiring technical person. I had shipped an iOS app when I was 14. I had learned to code Swift and shipped an iOS app. And it was an app that I actually think, the iPhone launched the app. I was thinking about this recently. Actually, the timing now is probably the time. It's not and nowhere near as, like, nothing isn't as interesting as what we're doing at Mantra to me. But the app was effectively, you'd push a button, and the second you open the app, it took 10 photos. So it's like, if you were on your phone, you're like, I want to quickly do, you never miss the moment. And I thought there was a cool consumer experience around that, where it's like, boom, the second you open the app, it takes 10 photos instantly, and then you could pick which ones you want to save. And then my broader vision was maybe these photos could loop, and this would be a fun format, or maybe this is like a social product where you could just get these really quick photos, the
Yeah.
types of photos that you take when you can't really see the preview as you're happening was like,
Yeah.
kind of
Like,
interesting. Or you
wait.
can, but it's, yeah, exactly. Now with the iOS action button, that's actually super useful because the
Yeah.
iOS or the iPhone action button now is this button that you can program with shortcuts to open any app. So if I could just push a button, like literally the side physical button on my iPhone, and then it opens that app instantly, that would actually be ideal. That's even faster than going
Yeah.
on your phone and taking a quick
Even
photo.
better. Yeah.
So this was kind of the idea. So I ended up shipping it, but it was before the action button. Like a few users, but nothing crazy, and it was a fun exercise. Back in the day when Stack Overflow was my Claude, but I just hated every second of it. And what I hated the most was I hated being limited by what I had this grand vision of what I wanted to execute on at the ripe age of 14. And I hated being limited by that based on my technical abilities. And would spend all my days in, prototyping things just by hand and then using Keynote because I don't think Figma really was a thing back then. I kind of used Sketch, but didn't really like it. And I would build these awesome prototypes and show people, and they'd be like, "Wow, this is so cool." And then I'd show them the app, and they'd be like, "Eh." And that discrepancy drove me fucking insane. And so I learned about Bubble a few years later, and started prototyping on the tool, and just fell in love with how quickly and how easy it was to test your ideas. And so how do I think about Bubble and playing? I think like in the broader scheme, I think the biggest challenge from my perspective is the kind of the question of, well, what happens? Like VCs, when you talk to a VC, most of them, they think about investments in the context of what happens when you have 100 million daily active users and you're doing $1 billion in revenue. Really, if you go into a VC meeting and you're like, I'm trying to build something that does a 500K a year, the meeting will end there. That's worse than anything you could say. And you shouldn't take VC money if you don't want to try to shoot for the moon or kind of die trying, if you will. And there's problems with that. I think like it's not always like, definitely, I think, overhyped. But for what we were building, we had no choice. And I think in hindsight, it was a good decision. Our lead investor, first round's been a phenomenal partner. But I would say that in the context of Bubble, how does that fit in? I think it's an incredible prototyping tool. VCs respond really well to prototypes. I think it's much better. My whole scheme was I would send them the pitch deck, then I'd send them a video version of the pitch deck that I made on the Bubble app I built. And then I'd hop on the Zoom call, and then I'd show them how I made the video they just watched and deconstruct the project on Bubble. And it wasn't a fake demo. It was a real thing. It was a real working thing. It worked. And so that's largely, okay, I was 19, we had raised a couple $1,000,000. Like, they need to know that at least I know how to do something. And what they kind of were able to, what they were able to kind of understand was, all right, well, he has good product sense. Sure, this might not be on the most scalable tech stack, but he has good product sense. And I hopefully they still think that. But sure I would say that I think that like I get the general impression that for non-technical founders, I think you could get a lot further by just building a Bubble prototype than you can be by prompting a kind of half-assed Claude front end. Claude's awesome. Our devs love it. But like, I do think there are lower hanging fruits. I'm shocked at the amount of hype Claude gets and Cursor relative to what you could do on Bubble for 5% of the effort. And so I hope that more founders use it to build prototypes. I think it's fun for founders to be more capital efficient. It's not just fun; it's economically wise. But I do think that the Bubble venture-backed teams we're hiring Bubble devs, especially if you want to do mobile. I know they're working on that, but I think that's a little bit of a harder sell just from a kind of tech stack scalability, technical debt perspective.
But if you're in B2B, you may be okay without a mobile app for a while.
Oh, for sure. I for sure. I think I do wonder. It's like, are you valued less by a potential acquirer? If your whole team is on, but like, again, like that's a silly goal. If you're building a public company, it doesn't matter. You could obviously migrate away from it, but it's certainly something that has crossed my mind.
It does. Yeah, it does matter. But if you have a good product and a good user base,
that is ultimately what they're paying for. Yeah,
depends on the end goal, right? Like
that's
depends
totally
on how or why you're getting acquired.
But
you have to.
And I'm sure there are many case studies that you can point to that would prove me wrong there.
Yeah, but if you need to get there, right? Like
Yeah.
Don't make it
Yeah.
impossible for you to get to the finish line and not start because
Totally.
you need bubble, but you don't want to use it. So yeah, no, I think
Yeah.
that's a good.
It's an insane excuse not to start the business.
Yeah. Hey,
It's more of a
I think
question
I'm
of
going to
what
be
happens
too
when you have.
successful, so I don't
Yeah.
even want to start. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
I'm worried that my tech stack will be a red flag to a prospective acquirer. So instead, I'm actually just not going to do it.
Yeah. I'm going to keep my job or, I
Yeah.
don't know, do someone else. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, I agree with
All
you. I
right.
think it's a weird decision at the time at which you're making the decision.
For sure. And by the way, look, I mean, like if you hack together something on Cursor and it got a bunch of users, I don't think that would be much help to the potential acquirer either. So I
That's
think
true.
like, it goes both ways.
Yeah.
There's a really good, one of my founder friends, whatever, mentioned, like he said, plenty of startups have died with beautiful code.
Yeah. Yes, that is definitely true. And so, yeah, I mean, get building, get started. Just try it. Just go sell it to somebody, make $1, and then worry about it. That's it.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest advantages that the bubble has in this respect is that you can make something beautiful with it. The interactions on Bubble are nice.
Mhm.
And so I think like you end up, it's not like it's like no one will truly know for 99% of things.
Yeah.
No one knew in our case.
Yeah.
So I don't think that like we live in a world where I believe I very much subscribe to this idea that you have to surprise and delight customers in order to actually build a valuable product. And in the case of Mantra, we think a lot about this, but I think this is true for most things. Like Google can't surprise and delight because they don't think that way, and they're big, and
Yeah.
they don't need to. They have a massive customer base. If you're trying to acquire customers, surprise and delight. And if you're going to surprise and delight, I think good design is at the center of that. I think design
Yeah.
is truly a differentiator, and
I
you
agree.
could achieve good design on a bubble product faster than you could using
With paper.
Tailwind.
Yeah, I think this is all good. We have to wrap it up here. This has been quite an awesome episode. I want to have you back on and keep chatting code, AI, no code, where it all lives, where it all fits. Where can people find you online, follow you, check out the product? How do people get in touch?
For sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me, man. You could check out the product at mantra.com, montra.com, or at montra on X. Big thank you to the first round team for helping us get that handle.
Nice.
And then I'm at Campbell J Barron. Maybe in the show notes if David's going to be nice.
Sure. Yeah.
On Twitter.
Definitely.
Not as active as I should be, but that will change soon.
Cool.
And if you want to create great videos, send me an email, campbell@mantra.com. You could skip the wait list if you tell me that you came from the No Code. This Week in No Code. I was going to say not the No Code Alliance podcast. This Week in No Code. You could say David sent you, and that will generally work even if you aren't a fan of the podcast. So
if you don't like podcasts, you can still
doesn't matter. We're indifferent here at Mantra HQ. Thanks for having me, David. It's
awesome.
been a pleasure.
Thanks
and
so
appreciate
much.
your support as we've been building.
Of course, yeah. This has been a lot of fun to watch.